My show is called Traces of a Social Movement, the Baltic Way, and it explores the 25th anniversary of a social movement that happened in the Baltic countries. In 1989, 2 million people held hands between the capitals of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which is 630 kilometers long, and 2 million people is 25% of the population, came out and stood in that line holding hands together. They were sort of jammed, it was so many people. They were protesting the agreement between the Soviets and the Germans to split Europe into spheres of influence, and this happened before World War II. At the end of World War II, the Soviets occupied the Baltics again. They had occupied them at the beginning, then Germany came in, then the Soviets came in, and they occupied them for it was almost 50 years by 1989. This was to celebrate and protest this piece of action that the Soviets had done. In 2004, was my first trip to Lithuania, and I was walking in Riga, which I visited the other countries as well, and in this bank building they had photographs from the 1989 event, and I saw these big photographs and I said, wow, I bet there's a book. So I went and searched at least 5 or 6 bookstores before I found the book of photographs from the original event, and I bought it and took it home and I read all the stuff, and so I became fascinated by how they could nonviolently bring about the fall of the Soviet Union, which is this massive empire, and get their freedom. And so I became fascinated by this. And a couple of years later, I was in one of the people I've met there, and in his home, and he was a photographer, newspaper person, and he was showing me his photographs. You know, he had stacks and stacks of photographs, and as I began to look through these photographs, I discovered that there were photographs that he had taken that were in that book that I had brought home. And so I began, oh yeah, I was there. I was a part of this event. I took photographs. I shot these number of rolls of camera. And he was telling me how he had some Kodachrome, which is a special Kodak film, and he had 2 rolls of it that he saved to be able to do some color images, but most of it was in black and white that he shot. So this began to make me think about the fact that there were people that I might know who were part of that event. And so I began to ask around, and I found other people who were part of the event. And also I began to think about the fact that none of my students know anything about this event. We all think the center of the world revolves around our own country. And here was something that was amazing, nonviolent, it matched our principles, our ideals, and I wanted to be able to tell that story to broader people. And also to even tell the people in Lithuania and Latvia, Estonia, that they have this amazing heritage. So it can give them courage and strength when sort of the economic forces of capitalism also are challenging. You know, it can say to their young people, you have this heritage, so your job now is to carry on with this heritage. So maybe you can face some of the tough times that continue to happen. I mean, just because you get your freedom doesn't mean everything becomes great. You have to work, you have to make things happen.